The gate closed in her face while she was carrying his child. She had walked to that party not to cause a scene, not to embarrass him, not to fight. She had simply needed to hear from his own mouth that it was over, that the man who had held her face like it was something precious had chosen someone else, that she had not imagined the last 4 months of her life. She got her answer. The gate closed, and standing outside in the dark, pregnant, humiliated, watched by strangers with phones already recording, Aisha collapsed. She hit the ground with everything she had believed about love and the future and herself. She did not know yet that falling to the ground in front of that gate was not the end of her story. It was the exact moment her real story began. Stay with me, because what Aisha built from that night, from nothing, from rejection, from a borrowed sewing machine that skipped stitches every third line, is going to make you rethink everything you believe about what a closed door actually means. Before we go any further, if you are new here, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. This channel brings you powerful emotional stories every single day, and you do not want to miss where this one goes. Now let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back to Aisha. Aisha grew up in a small rented home in Kano with her aunt, Hajatunu. Her mother had died when Aisha was 7 years old. Her father had followed 2 years later, not from illness but from the specific kind of grief that hollows a person out until there is simply nothing left to hold the body upright. He had loved her mother completely and had not known how to exist in a world that no longer contained her. Aisha was 9 years old when she became an orphan. She had no siblings, no property, no inheritance beyond a collection of her mother's fabrics that her aunt had carefully folded and stored at the back of a wardrobe in the hope that Aisha would want them someday. What she had instead was her aunt, a woman who sold fabrics in the market 6 days a week and had taken a grieving little girl into her home without complaint and without condition and had simply raised her as her own. Aisha did not spend her childhood grieving what she had lost. She was the kind of child who finds ways to be busy, ways to be useful, ways to transform the empty spaces in a day into something that belongs to her. She found her something in fabric. The way colors spoke to each other across a table, the way a hem could transform a woman's entire silhouette, the way a simple cut could make a body feel like it had always been exactly the right shape. She sketched in the back pages of old exercise books by lamplight after the market closed, dresses that existed nowhere except in her mind and on those pages. She filled book after book with them. She told her aunt once carefully, like confessing something fragile, that she wanted to go to fashion school in Lagos one day. Her aunt had looked at her for a long moment and then said, "Keep dreaming. Dreams are free." So she kept dreaming, and she kept sketching, and she kept helping at the fabric stall during the day and drawing at night and believing, in the quiet, determined way of a girl who has learned early that nobody is coming to rescue her, that she was going to build something out of her life. She was 22 years old when everything changed. Malik Haruna drove his car through a puddle at the wrong speed and soaked half of her aunt's fabric display. Aisha stood very still for one moment. Then she straightened up, wiped her face, and said, loud enough for the entire market row to hear it clearly, "A car that expensive should come with manners." The market women laughed. People turned to look. And the man behind the wheel, handsome, bewildered, not remotely accustomed to being spoken to that way by anyone, let alone someone who had nothing, stepped out of his car slowly and looked at her with an expression she could not yet read. He came back the next day. He said it was to replace the damaged fabric. Then it was to apologize properly. Then it was simply to sit nearby while she arranged Ankara print and acted as though his presence was entirely ordinary. He told her months later that she was the first person who had ever looked at him like he was just a man. She thought that was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever said to her. She did not know yet that the thing a man finds most magnetic about you is very often the first thing he will quietly, carefully try to take away. He was patient with her, deliberately, strategically patient in the way that people are patient when they want something they know cannot be rushed. He asked about her father. He remembered the details. He brought her books about textiles from Abuja and watched her face when she opened them. He listened, genuinely it seemed, when she talked about her designs, her dreams, what she wanted to build. He made her feel seen in a way she had not felt since her father died. 3 months in, she trusted him. 4 months in, she loved him. He rented a small apartment for her, better than where she lived with her aunt. Air conditioning, running water, a kitchen where she could cook without rationing the gas cylinder. He told her, "You are the peace I never had." She believed him. She believed him completely. She did not know about his mother's plans. She did not know that Hajia Toruntu had already been making inquiries about a senator's daughter in Abuja. She did not know that the same man who held her face like it was precious was taking calls from that senator's family in another room with the door carefully closed. She found out the way most women find out, not dramatically, not with evidence arranged on a table. She found out through silence. Messages that started taking longer to be answered. Weekends that became suddenly busy. The way he stopped saying we when he talked about the future and started saying I. She sat with that shift in language for 2 weeks before she understood what it meant. And then she discovered she was pregnant. She sat on the floor of her bathroom for a very long time, holding the test strip. Her first feeling was not fear. It was happiness, because she loved him and she thought love was enough. She had believed deeply and genuinely that love was enough. She called him 3 times before he answered. He came that evening. She told him. He went very still in the way people go still when their mind is already making calculations their face has not yet caught up with. He said, "Are you sure?" "Yes." He sat there for a long time with an expression she had never seen before. Flat, distant, the face of a man who is already somewhere else. Then he said, "The fact that I love you does not mean I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He left. He did not call that night. He did not call the next morning. On the 7th day, Aisha opened Instagram. The engagement announcement photograph was perfectly composed. Malik in a white agbada, his fiancée in blush pink, both of them smiling with the particular ease of people who believe the world is small and perfect and arranged entirely for their benefit. Aisha sat on the floor of the apartment he had rented for her. She did not move for 2 hours. Then she stood up, packed one bag, and went home to her aunt. She decided to go to the engagement party. She told herself she simply needed to hear it from him directly, that it was over, that there was an explanation, that the photograph had a context she was missing. You already know what she found when she got there. The gate closed in her face. His mother's voice carried clearly through the air. Something about girls who trap men. Something about poor people with poor mindsets. Aisha heard it all. And then the ground came up to meet her. She woke up in a public hospital. Fluorescent lights. The smell of disinfectant. Her aunt beside her, face drawn tight with the particular expression of a woman who has already survived too much and is making peace with the fact that there is more to survive. Her aunt did not lecture her. She did not say, "I told you so." She simply stayed beside her with the steady presence of someone who has decided that love is a verb and not a feeling, and that the verb requires showing up regardless of circumstances. The video had already gone viral by morning. Someone had recorded everything. Malik's denial, his mother's words, the gate closing, Aisha falling. Comments came in by the thousands. Some people were furious on her behalf. Most were simply entertained. A few were cruel in the specific way that people are cruel when they feel safe behind a screen and when the person they are being cruel about cannot see them. The market women talked. Customers stopped coming to her aunt's store. One woman said loudly that she did not want to buy fabric from a place associated with that kind of girl. Aisha heard this. She said nothing. She was already pregnant and already alone and already building something in her mind that had no name yet but was beginning to have a shape. She gave birth 6 weeks early during a thunderstorm. The hospital room shook when lightning hit close. One baby came out crying, strong and certain. The other came out silent. The doctors moved quickly toward the second one. There was no sound for a very long time. Aisha lay watching from across the room and prayed in the concentrated way of someone who has nothing left to bargain with except honesty. The baby breathed. Both girls survived. She named them Amira and Asia. The joy lasted exactly 1 day before a nurse appeared at her bedside with a paper that had a number on it. A deposit required before continued treatment for the smaller baby could proceed. Aisha looked at the number. She looked at the ceiling. She reached up and unclasped the thin gold necklace around her neck, the one Malik had given her on her birthday, the one she had worn every day since, the one she had told herself meant something. She placed it in the nurse's hand. "Find someone to exchange this," she said. She never wore gold again after that day, not until she could buy her own. The months that followed were the kind that age a person quickly. She moved back fully into her aunt's house. The twins slept on a thin mattress between them. Money was tight and getting tighter. The fabric business had not recovered from the damage to its reputation. Aisha took in sewing work at night after the baby slept, using a borrowed machine that skipped stitches every third line. She did not complain about the machine. She worked around its limitations the way she had always worked around every limitation in her life, by learning it thoroughly and then refusing to be stopped by it. She sketched whenever she could, during naps, during the brief windows when her aunt took the girls for a walk. Her notebook filled up with designs that existed nowhere except on those pages. It was the only thing that felt entirely hers. One afternoon, a woman collapsed in the market nearby. Aisha was the first to reach her. She helped her to the ground, loosened her collar, sent someone running for water, and stayed beside her until the ambulance came. She held the woman's hand the entire time without being asked. The woman's name was Mrs. Patricia Dainde. She came back to the market 2 weeks later looking specifically for the girl who had stayed. She found Aisha at the back of her aunt's stall, sketching a dress design in a notebook while nursing one of the twins with the particular efficient calm of a woman who has learned to do several things at once because there is no alternative. Mrs. Dainde looked at the sketches for a long time without speaking. Then she asked, "Where did you study?" "I did not," Aisha said. Mrs. Dainde smiled slowly. "Even better," she said. Mrs. Dainde owned Dainde Couture, a luxury fashion house in Lagos, with clients across Nigeria and connections far beyond it. She was 60 years old. She was childless. She had spent 30 years building something extraordinary from nothing, and she recognized the particular look on Aisha's face, the way you recognize a language you once spoke yourself. She offered Aisha a job, not as a seamstress, as a junior designer. Aisha sat with the offer for 3 days. Then she sat with her aunt late one night while the twins slept and the ceiling fan struggled above them. "Auntie," she said, "I do not want my daughters to grow up hearing pity in people's voices whenever my name is mentioned." Her aunt took her hand. "You are not abandoning them," she said. "You are building something for them." Aisha's eyes filled. "I am afraid they will forget me." Her aunt was quiet for a moment. "A mother who sacrifices for her children," she said finally, "is never forgotten." The next morning, Aisha packed one small bag. Before she left, she carried each twin separately and held them slowly, one after the other, memorizing the weight of them, the smell of them, the specific way each one settled against her shoulder. She whispered into each small ear, "I am leaving so that one day nobody will ever look down on you." She left the little money she had saved with her aunt and promised to send more every month. She kept that promise every single month for 7 years without interruption, even in the months when she herself ate once a day, even in the months when the money she sent left her account empty for 3 weeks at a time. Lagos received her without ceremony. She shared a single room near the island with 2 other women. She arrived before everyone and slept after everyone. She studied during lunch breaks. She stayed late in the design studio until the security guard quietly asked her to leave, and then waited outside until she had finished the thought she was working on. Mrs. Dinde watched her without saying much. She gave her small tasks and watched carefully how she handled them. She gave her larger ones and watched how she handled those. Gradually, almost without announcement, Aisha's designs began appearing in the final collection, first as suggestions, then as features, then as the pieces that clients specifically requested. Every night without exception, Aisha called home. Some nights the twins were already sleeping, and she would simply sit on the phone in the dark, listening to them breathe through the speaker. Her aunt would hold the phone near their faces, and Aisha would close her eyes and hold that sound close the way you hold warmth when the room is cold. After those calls, she would sit quietly for a few minutes. She never allowed herself to cry for long. There was no time for long crying. Only the short, controlled kind that you finish before the alarm goes off. 3 years into Lagos, something happened that Aisha had not planned for and could not have engineered. A rising actress named Chisom wore one of Aisha's pieces to an award ceremony. A deep maroon gown with asymmetric draping that looked as though it was in motion even when the wearer was standing perfectly still. A photographer caught her from the right angle at the right moment. The photograph landed on Twitter, then Instagram, then on international fashion pages whose editors had never been to Nigeria and had never heard of Kano. People asked who made that dress. By morning, Aisha's name was in thousands of mouths that had never had it before. Mrs. Dinde called her into the office that Monday. She sat across from Aisha with the expression of someone who has been waiting for a specific moment and has just watched it arrive. "It is time," she said, "for you to have your own label." Aisha looked at her. "I will back you," Mrs. Dinde said, "but this one is yours. Your name, your vision, your work." Aisha named it Amira Asia, after her daughters. The label launched quietly. Then it grew loudly. Within 2 years, it was dressing the wives of governors, Nollywood royalty, and women in diaspora who wanted something that felt like home, but looked like the future. Aisha gave interviews in the magazines she used to read in waiting rooms. She sat in front of cameras and spoke about fabric, about resilience, about the North, about her daughters, about what it means to build something from a place of complete emptiness. She never once mentioned Malik by name. She did not need to. Back in Kano, things were different for Malik Haruna. The engagement to Farida lasted 8 months before it collapsed quietly under the weight of things he had chosen not to disclose before the wedding was arranged. The senator's family withdrew the way powerful families withdraw when they sense risk, completely and without public explanation. The business troubles followed. A real estate investment in Abuja went wrong in ways that attracted the kind of attention he had never wanted. A business partner disappeared with money that was not his to take. The friends who had stood beside him at the engagement announcement stopped answering calls. His mother's social connections dried up one by one the way cut flowers dry, slowly, then all at once. Malik married 3 times. None of the marriages lasted. None of them gave him the child he had decided he needed. And somewhere in the quiet of a life that had contracted significantly from the size he had once imagined it would be, he thought about 2 little girls in Kano, who had his blood and had grown up without his name. 7 years after the night at the gate, a convoy of 3 black SUVs drove through the streets of Kano and stopped in front of a new building where an old fabric stall used to stand. The building was wide, freshly painted. Above the door, a sign in clean lettering said, Amira Asia Fashion Academy, free training for girls who dare to dream. Aisha stepped out of the middle car. She was 30 years old. She wore a cream ensemble she had designed herself. Her braids were perfect. Her posture was the posture of a woman who has carried heavy things for a long time and has made the deliberate decision to stand up straight anyway. The market stopped. People looked. Then they began to talk. Then they began to clap. The women who had whispered. The customers who had abandoned her aunt's store. The neighbors who had watched her fall. They all stood there now watching her walk past. She did not perform for them. She did not look at them with triumph or with bitterness. She simply walked. She went to her aunt's house first, before any press, before any photographs, before any ceremony. She sat in the same room where she had once sketched dresses by lamplight, and she held her daughters, 7 years old now, tall and full of opinions and curious about everything. And she did not speak for a long time. Amira pressed her face against her shoulder. Mama, she said, you smell the same. Aisha laughed. Then she cried. Then she laughed again. Malik came 3 days later, not with lawyers, not with advance notice. He came with his mother in a car that was noticeably less impressive than the cars he had once driven, and he asked the academy staff quietly if he might speak with her. Aisha made them wait 45 minutes, not from cruelty. She simply needed to be ready. She needed to be the version of herself that was completely settled before she walked into that room. She met them in a small office inside the academy. Plain chairs, a wooden table, afternoon light coming through a window that looked out on the main road. She sat across from them and did not offer tea. Malik looked older. He looked smaller in the specific way that men look smaller when the external things that once held them upright, money, status, other people's attention, have been gradually removed. His mother's diamond earrings were gone. He said, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Aisha looked at him for a measured moment. No, she said, your biggest mistake was believing that a woman becomes worthless when a man rejects her. His mother looked at the table. Her eyes were wet. She began to speak, something about youth, about fear, about advice she had given that she should not have given. Aisha held up one hand, gently but completely. I have already forgiven you, she said, both of you, not for your sake, for mine. Carrying anger is heavy, and I made a decision a long time ago to stop carrying heavy things. Malik exhaled slowly. The girls, he said. They are mine, Aisha said. They always were, but they deserve to know where they come from. I will not take that from them. However, you will know them as their father. Nothing more than that. There is no road back to me. That road is closed. I closed it myself. The same night your gate closed on my face. As he moved toward the door, he stopped. He turned back. How did you do it? He asked. After everything. How? Aisha picked up a fabric sample from the table and turned it slowly between her hands. Some doors close to protect your future, she said, not to destroy it. That gate closing was the best thing that ever happened to me. She paused. I just did not know it yet. She watched him leave. Then she went back to her daughters. That evening, Aisha sat outside the academy with her aunt and her daughters as the sun went down over Kano. The city was loud the way it had always been. Horns, the call to prayer, market sounds, someone's radio playing from across the street. The same city that had watched her fall, the same sky that had rained on her when she was on her knees. Aisha was leaning against her arm, drawing something in a notebook. Aisha looked down. It was a dress design, rough and childish and full of color. She smiled. Aisha had not come back for revenge. She had come back as proof. Proof that the girl they had watched collapse at that gate was not the end of the story. She had been only the beginning. She had built a company from borrowed thread and skipped stitches and late nights and calls home that sometimes broke her heart quietly. She had raised 2 daughters through 7 years of sacrifice so complete that some months the sacrifice was the only thing on the table. She had forgiven without forgetting. She had chosen peace over bitterness and had somehow, through that choice and through every hard morning that followed it, ended up with everything she had ever sketched in those old exercise books by lamplight. Not because life was fair. Life had never been fair to her, and she had never required it to be. But because she had refused, through every humiliation, every sleepless night, every closed gate, to let anyone's rejection become her definition. The sun finished setting. The city lights came on. She smiled the smile of a woman who has nothing left to prove to anyone. If Aisha's story moved you, if you cried, if you felt something shift in how you think about closed doors and rejection and what women build when everything is taken from them, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel for powerful emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. New stories come every single day. Hit the bell icon so you never miss one. Thank you for watching until the very end. It means more than you know. See you in the next story.